Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jake, this is Nadia. The doggies are running around downstairs. Today we are talking about Joker 2, or as it's properly known, Joker Folie à Deux.
Yeah.
French. Neither of us had seen Joker. We watched it last night. No, the night before last. We can talk about that. We can talk about our feelings about the original Joker. But mostly we want to start out talking about Joker 2. What it adds, what all the fuss is about. Because there's a lot of controversy around the reaction to this movie. And so we haven't spoken about this at all. I'm really curious to hear what you thought of this musical sequel to a non-musical Joker. So tell me, what did you think of this?
Well, first of all, I'm not aware of any controversy. I didn't realize there were any.
There's not really controversy, except what I mean is it's more divisive reception.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not aware of that, too.
It's getting very bad reviews.
Oh, okay. I guess you'll be surprised to, first of all, let me lead my rating by me giving it 7 out of 10.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't know what you're gonna rate it, but I just wanted to lead with that since you're saying it's getting bad reviews.
Okay.
I mean, we watched it, like Jake was saying, back to back. So we watched the first Joker, then the second night we went to theater and watched the second one.
Well, curiously, what would you rate the first Joker?
I would rate it the same, 7 out of 10.
So you'd give them both 7 out of 10?
Yeah, but for different reasons.
Okay.
Yeah, it's completely different film because the second one is a musical.
Mm-hmm.
But the character arc and the character struggle and everything else is very similar. The sentiment I feel like behind two movies are very similar. The only thing that makes the second one different is the musical. Otherwise, I would have rated it probably like 3 or 4 out of 10 because you kind of feel like you're watching this first movie as terms of the plot line. Like, and I don't mean by saying that everything from the first movie is duplicated. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the character arc in the sense of what he goes through internally, what he comes to accept about himself.
I disagree that it's the same arc, but I would say that he is basically a static character in both movies.
And I think that Joaquin, if anyone else would have played this character except for Joaquin Phoenix or a lot of other ones, it would have been really bad. You could just see what a great actor Joaquin Phoenix is just by the way he's able to put some dimension in otherwise one-noted written character. I think
he's the only reason why the first one, not the only reason, but I think he's the main reason why the first movie works at all.
And the second movie kind of reminded me of, I mean, this is from Joaquin Phoenix too, of Beau is Afraid. And I can get into that in the spoiler section, but yeah, I understand why it's a divisive movie because there's parts of it that is really out there. What happens to him is very unexpected. It's very creative. There is animation in the film where you're going inside.
Literal animation.
Yeah, literal animation.
At the beginning of the movie starts
where you're going inside Joaquin or Joker's head and his thoughts.
Arthur Fleck.
Yeah, and you get to Arthur Fleck. Yep, and then you get to, is he Arthur Fleck or is he the Joker?
That's what the whole movie is about. Yeah.
You get to see why he's making these insane choices. I watched a lot of Justice League and other things, and Joker was always this like animated character that you just are like, he's a Joker. He's in clown costume. He's just mentally insane. Both movies, but especially I think the second one, you really understand and get to humanize him. I wanted him to win. The way that he acts, the way that like we're able to see inside his head, you just understand. Not doesn't mean you condone, but you understand what got him to where he was and why his thought process is the way it is. That's the interesting part about the film is that you really
first movie, right?
And the second too.
Okay.
With Joaquin's portrayal, as well as the way that the set is designed, the way that the story plots unfold. You get to see him instead of a villain, you see him more as sympathetic character. He doesn't really eat. When we see him in cafeterias a lot and there's a lot of different things going on, we don't see him like jumping at the chance to eat. And I think that's kind of the same thing. He kind of lets himself stay hollow mentally.
Well, I think the movie's hollow, essentially.
Well, what do you think
Yeah, I mean, well, first I want to talk about Joker, the first movie, because I do think it works as a movie. I don't think you can say the same of the sequel, although I think the sequel is doing more interesting stuff than the first one.
Huh.
So the first one is firing on all cylinders with the performance, the directing. Both of these movies look beautiful. They have just gorgeous cinematography, especially for a comic book movie, quote unquote. Even though these movies try so hard to be like, we're not like those comic book movies, you know, we're cool. We're referencing Scorsese. And ultimately, the heart of with the Joker is that it feels really hollow and it feels very drawn out, the first movie, to a point of like, yeah, we're doing Taxi Driver, we're doing The King of Comedy, we're doing an alienated guy who has been harmed by society, and the point is very in your face and it's a tragedy, but it still has suspense. There's good scenes, there's violence, and there's stuff happening, and you're seeing a progression of his character going from weak guy who's getting a bad rep from society to the Joker, basically. So there's like a sense of progress in the story. The sequel, you have to wonder, what were they thinking when they went into this movie? And I have to think that Todd Phillips and this other writer, I forget his name, almost feel like they hate the reception and they hate the way people reacted to the original Joker, which at the time there were legitimate conversations in the media about the Joker is going to radicalize people. The Joker is going to make young incels want to go shoot someone,
Similar to the film itself.
Exactly. People are like, this is a bad sign for people. And the movie comes out and it's like a huge phenomenon. People love it, but there's not like any violence as a result of Joker, It's a DC movie about a character that people love, and great performances, and it's a pretty good movie. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10.
Okay, not that below mine.
The first Joker, I mean, I have problems with like the pacing and everything, but when they came to the sequel, you have to think like, okay, like how do we have all like a blank check to do whatever we want? It had so much success, so let's get wild with it, and maybe let's do a commentary about the reaction to the first movie. Let's make a statement about what people are seeing in the Joker character. And this whole movie ends up litigating that whole idea of the reaction. It's very meta in a way when you think about it. It's all about a trial. The Joker's on trial. It's all about the media frenzy and reaction, how everyone's obsessed with the Joker. Lady Gaga plays a fan of the Joker, So there's all of these elements. And at the heart of it is the same somber tone of this guy, Arthur Fleck. He's in pain and he's sad, and he's kind of wavering between, is he the Joker or is he Arthur Fleck? And I think the movie really wants us to buy into this argument because his lawyer, his attorney, is trying to argue to the jury that he has a split personality. And it's at this point in the movie when I'm wondering, what are we trying to say about who this character is? Because we all, especially having just watched the first Joker, we know what happened. We know that it wasn't a split personality. It was this guy getting beaten down by how horrible society is and then like snapping. He always had something wrong with him, but he got off his meds. He couldn't get any counseling anymore. All the welfare funding dried up. It's very much like this is what happens to a person who has mental issues, who's been abused all their life. They might do something like this.
And he doesn't get the help that he needs anymore.
He doesn't get the help he needs. So we see him as a tragic figure. Like, no, murder is bad. Yeah, of course. But in the sequel, we're looking at him always pondering this question of like, well, is he Joker or is he Arthur Fleck? And to me, it felt so irrelevant. And I think when you'll see a lot of reviews, people talking about how this movie sucks, how it doesn't work, how mainly a lot of people will say the musical sequences don't add anything to the story. They'll say the musical sequences just bloated up this movie and they sucked. I wouldn't say all of the musical sequences were great. I think the point of musicals isn't that the musical sequences advance the story. It's that they enhance the story. They're the reason why you're seeing the musical is for the music. And what I think people really, when they complain about the musical sequences, what they're really saying is that it has a story problem. Like, it is in the script. It's in the bones of the story that it doesn't know what it wants to be. There isn't enough of like a causal reaction to each event in the script. It just feels like this happens and then this happens and then this happens and then this happens without any chain of connectivity. As a trial movie, it doesn't work because we aren't seeing how they're mounting the defense. We aren't seeing the details of who's up and who's down in the perception of the jury and in the media. We're just seeing characters talk about the events of the previous movie. That's sometimes the most interesting part of the movie because something's happening. And then another part of the movie is a prison movie where it's just very grim and it's very much like, wow, prison sucks and he's struggling. And then there's the Lady Gaga romance that also just is immediate and doesn't really advance very smoothly. It felt very choppy, just like, okay, then they're in love, and then what? And then it's the musical. They don't work together. They might work together if it had an advancing story. I felt like I couldn't care about Arthur Fleck as a character because he doesn't really care. He's gone through his Joker arc. He's clearly insane. And what does it matter that he goes to the death penalty or he goes to a different type of prison or whatever? Like, it doesn't seem like he cares, you know?
Well, it matters a lot. I mean, without getting into spoilers, so I do disagree with you on that part.
That's fine, but I just found a lack of interest in this character. It felt like he just wasn't changing, except until the very end of the movie, but it was just way too late. This movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. There wasn't enough dynamic stuff. At first, I was intrigued with the musical sequences. Again, the movie looks great, but that's not going to hold you for 2 hours.
I think that this movie could have been like shorter for sure. And I don't think it's about, I think it's about like musical, in this case, the sequel, looking more closely to Joker, like almost like a historic documentary, but in a musical style about what makes Joker tick. What makes Joker the Joker.
But again, we already know that because we saw the first movie.
I know, but I think like what you said about musical enhancing a story rather than advancing, I think that's like the key here, is that they want to just enhance what we already know and make it more like a love story.
Boring.
And make it into more of a love story with Lady Gaga, you know?
Yeah, so. But I mean, I didn't think the love story was very interesting because we're looking at, to me, I felt like there was way less empathy into the Arthur Fleck character now that he's gone through his Joker arc, because now it's like, oh, he's just crazy, and he loves Lady Gaga's character because they're crazy. Woo! There wasn't anything there. It just felt very static.
I don't know. I enjoyed it. I agree that like it was longer than it needed to be. I think it could have been like 1 hour 40 minutes long instead of 2 hours 20 minutes long. And I think it would have further enhanced the story because you kind of get more into the point. I think there's a lot of musical scenes that was needed and that you see in a typical, like if this is not a Joker film and you watch like other films, you see that the musical sequences and the way that it way that it unravels throughout the film, it's not that different from a typical musical. If you were to judge it as a musical, which is what I'm doing it as, it's not a bad movie. It's an entertaining film. I think the problem is that there is a lot of revealing something that has already been revealed. But at the same time, it takes a leap and it takes a one step forward by getting you inside Joker's mind, which doesn't happen in the original film. You know, the combination of two, you can either love it or hate it kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately people are going to, if you're a fan of the first one, and I've already seen a lot of fans of the first one, they feel like the director and writers like saying, fuck you for liking the first one. Especially when we talk about the ending, which we'll get to in spoilers, which is kind of like the whole point of the movie.
I didn't expect what happened in the ending. But, you know, I liked the first one and I didn't think that way at all. I just felt like it was just a creative choice. And
well, shall we get into spoilers?
Yes, I recommend it though before we do.
Okay, I give it a 3 out of 10.
Oh my God. Okay, so you don't recommend the sequel. You recommend the first one, but not the sequel.
Is 3 out of 10 too harsh? No, I'll give it a 3 out of 10, yeah. I say Joker is a fine movie. This one is really interesting. Like, I have to admire it for what it's trying to say and do. Like, it definitely has more ideas behind it, I think, than the first one. But the execution just did not work. And ultimately, you feel kind of cheated. Like, all right, 2 hours and 20 minutes for like a bad joke. So... Spoilers? 3, 2, 1.
what I really disagreed with you when you were talking in the non-spoiler section was about how it doesn't really matter if he's like what kind of person or whatever. I think it talks a lot about like, or shows a lot about how much he is further victimized in the system of the prison system that he is in. He's humiliated instead of getting the mental health he needs. And when he goes to the other, mental institution, like he's not seeing like actual psychiatrists. He's not getting anything. They're just kind of putting him on meds and then letting him be a zombie where he is not himself anymore. I mean, I think the lawyer that he had in the beginning of the film, through the midpoint until he fired her, she cared to a point about him, right? She wanted to kind of like, she had her own agenda too. She wanted to use the idea of him having split personality, getting off trial, to show further about how bad the prison that he was in, the high security facility, how bad it is. But you can just, it's not like she's not wrong. Problems are not taken seriously. Throw him in jail and lock him up, right? And hope nothing else happens. There's no rehabilitation.
I don't think that was the point of the movie, though. I don't think that's what.
Well, this is what I took out of it.
Okay.
But and I think that usually if you just look at Joker with solely his actions, it's really easy for him to be unsympathetic. It's really easy for him to, and this is where I credit the movie a lot. It's really easy for him to be like, yeah, throw him in and lock him up. He is insane. And nothing good can come from him like getting any help because he's beyond help. But what I loved about the musical is the fact that you got to see his inner thoughts, his inner working, his ego, his pride, his sense of identity and sense of any self-respect continuously being demolished over and over again. I also like the trial scene where the neighbor was talking about what his mother would say about him. And when you watch the first film, you see how much he dedicated himself to caring for his mom, just for her. His mom to just think he's basically a loser, has a lot of problems, when we saw that she actually gave him a lot of the problems that he has, right? So narcissistic mom that he could never please. Anything good he does, and in his mind, I think taking care of his mom was a lot of good. They're not rewarded. The only thing he's being rewarded and he's getting attention from is when he's the Joker instead of author. And I think at the end of the film, what's really surprising, and also the big difference between the first film and the sequel, is that the first film, he accepts himself as a Joker. In the second film, he takes accountability in a lot of sense. He's like just tired. He gets really horribly beaten up in the prison system. He's just done. And he's kind of learned that if he advocates for himself in any way at all, not saying the way he advocates for himself is, it's very misguided, but nonetheless, his intention is to advocate for himself, and it ends up more and more horribly for him. You can like hear the prison guard like incapacitating other prisoners because they are also speaking up against them. And so he just gives up. And then so many people turn away from him because he gives up. And so either he puts on this facade of a Joker and lets himself like really gives himself to a really demonic part of himself, or he tries to heal himself, which doesn't get taken seriously, and he gets abandoned. He's like, yeah, That's where I think the film exceeded. Not exceeded my expectation in the sense of like, it's still a 7 out of 10 for me. It exceeded the whole perception that this is a one-noted character and he doesn't go through any other arc, or it's like he finds love with Lady Gaga, but even she loves him for who she wants him to be. He's always wearing these different hats. He's always wearing these different masks. So although he clearly doesn't have split personality, he can't be himself. The society doesn't accept him. The least violent version of him in the first film and this one always gets disrespected. And I thought it was so surprising that he died. But, because Batman, Joker, it's, the whole thing. But I think he aspires probably like other people, because there are other people who are dressed like Joker, other people who saw the Joker, who are more cynical than him, probably take on that role that evolves into Batman and Joker.
Well, I think the movie was implying that basically the guy who stabbed him in prison at the end of the movie was like Heath Ledger's Joker, basically.
Oh, okay.
Because he's like laughing in the background, and as we zoom into Joaquin Phoenix's face at the end, kind of blurry in the background, you can kind of see him like cutting his cheeks with the knife, because that was Heath Ledger's Joker. He had these knife cuts up like smiles. It basically implying like, no, that's the real Joker in this world, and this was just like some guy who inspired that. So I think it was an interesting take. Yeah. Like, I will say that, like, they definitely were like, because I think the media frenzy in the movie, and there's so many people obsessed with the Joker in the movie, an unrealistic amount, considering how he's just like a murderer who just like killed a bunch of people. And there's a lot of testimony from people, especially this guy, his former coworker, Mr. Puddles, who goes on the stand. And it's like a very emotional scene. It's probably the best scene in the movie, where he's talking about like this horrible stuff, you know, that how he's so traumatized, because, and Joker's like, no, I like you. I don't have a problem. I didn't kill you. And he's like, well, I'm traumatized. I have all this, you know, and you get a sense of like, yeah, I mean, obviously this guy isn't a good guy. He's a killer. It felt a little like filmmakers being like, remember, he's a bad guy. Don't forget, this guy is, what he did is bad. Ultimately, that scene when Joker, during the climax of the trial, he looks at the jury and is like, it's a fantasy. I'm not the Joker. It's not a split personality. It's what I wish I could be, but I killed 5 people. That was me. And then Lady Gaga, who's Harley Quinn, who's like weirdly obsessed with him. First off, I would like to have seen way more of these side characters in this movie. Harley Quinn, this woman who was obsessed with the Joker, she has a master's degree, or she comes from rich family, and she's just like, I want to see her world. Like, how does this work out for her? I just felt like she played such a small part in this movie when it was so advertised as like her and Joaquin's movie, and like she was just there to sing some songs, really.
No, I don't believe that. I think she was in like at least 35-40% of the film. So.
Well, anyways, I wish there was more depth to her character. Ultimately, what happens right after he has this big speech where he's like, I'm not the Joker, a bomb blows up the courthouse. A very long, drawn-out scene of him escaping, and then these guys dressed like the Joker rescue him. They're like his fans, and they're like, we got you free, it's the real one. They blew up the courthouse and everything. Joaquin Phoenix Joker, he just jumps out of the car and runs away, and he goes to the stairs, the famous stairs from the first movie, and he sees Harley Quinn there, and she's like, you're not the same guy, you said it yourself, you're not Joker, I don't love you. And it's tragic, and then he just gets arrested, and then the movie ends with him just back in prison where we started. So it's very much the point of it is that it's unsatisfying almost. It's a repudiation of the first movie's story in a sense, and then at the final joke of the movie is him getting killed, and he's not actually the Joker. So, you know, he's just some guy who inspired the Joker. It's fine, you know. I just thought the journey to get to that point was like if they really wanted to build that theme of like, this is what the movie's about, bland, boring, like it just didn't keep me going through this movie the whole way. So yeah, so that's our take on Joker 2.
Let us know.
Let us know
what you think,
what you thought of this movie, and yeah,
we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.